Shalom and welcome to the iVision Live. My name is Or Adi and I will be the facilitator of today's session. The iVision Live program was developed in the World Zionist Organization, Department for Diaspora Affairs, that I'm proud to be its American East Coast Shlichut. From Jerusalem, the department is being led by a member of the WZO Executive Board, Ms. Gusti Yoshua Braverman, and works with a staff of shlichim and educators in 36 different countries around the world. We are proud to develop and offer programs that bring voices of young Israeli artists, activists, musicians, and educators, and to elaborate the discussion around them for maintaining the role of Israel as part of their modern Jewish identity. The iVision Live is our response to these weird days of the coronavirus, one that will offer daily sessions with Israeli speakers about diverse topics and points of interest. I'm proud to say that on this Zoom session we have participants from 7 countries around the world, so feel free to write in the chat box your name and where you're coming from. And this is such an exciting fact that all of us are able to gather together, learn and discuss our connection to Israel. By the way, this session is being screened live on Facebook and it is being recorded. So if you don't want to be seen, please close your camera. But enough about us. Today, we will watch a short film called Cleaning Time, or Etzlenu in Hebrew, and we will have an opportunity to hear about the immigration of Ethiopian Jewry and their absorption in the state of Israel from Zehava Tesfay. Zehava was born and raised in southern Israel to a family that had made Aliyah from Ethiopia in 1981 by journeying through Sudan. She earned a BA in education, sociology, and anthropology, and well as an MA in nonprofit and community organization management, both from the Hebrew University. Zehava came to New York to serve as a Jewish agency emissary and leads the delegation of Shlichim, serving in the UJA Federation of New York Shlichut Initiative. She also volunteers extensively in the areas of employment diversity and women's leadership development. At the end of the screening, we will open the chat option, and we highly encourage you to send your questions and write down your thoughts about the screen, about the film, and we will address that after watching the film. If you do choose to send a question, let us know, please, your name and where you're coming from. A few sentences about the film Cleaning Time. So it was directed by the Israeli filmmaker Alamok Marsha, who was born in the small village of Avash, Ethiopia, and immigrated to Israel with her family in 1991. The film already participated in a great number of film festivals over Israel and at international festivals in Netherlands, Berlin, India, US, Afghanistan, and even Ethiopia. Now is the time to ask all your questions. If you have anything you want to say or ask about the film, now is the time to write it in the chat box. Zehava, my first question to you. So the number of Ethiopian community members in Israel is approximately 151,800 people, which is 1.68% of the total population in Israel. I would like to hear from you about the history of the immigration to Ethiopian Jews to Israel and about your personal family history.
So first of all, thank you all for having me here. It's going to be challenging to kind of like grasp this like whole history in a really, like short time. So I will just maybe start with a different highlight and then go to my personal story. So first of all, I don't know how many people know, but like, the Jews in Israel, in Ethiopia, thought that they're the only Jews alive, that it's upon them to keep the Jewish people alive. And they, with all the years that they were in Ethiopia, they were yearning to get to Jerusalem. to get to the land of Israel. They didn't know about the state of Israel. They didn't know there are like more countries than just Jerusalem or Jerusalem, as we call it. And I don't know how many people know, but actually when Herzl was 2-3 years old, there was already a first group led by Abba Mahari that made an attempt to get from the village of Ethiopia to the land of Israel. There's like a different stories if they made it outside of Ethiopia or not, but basically a lot died along the way. So the people that remained alive went back to Ethiopia. When we go back, talking about the Ethiopian Jews goes back to the 9th centuries of different people that meet people that look black, but basically have the custom of being Jewish. If we're talking about, the recent history, so in 1955, there were like a few students that came to Israel, to Kfar Batya, in order to come and learn and go back to Ethiopia and open school and educate the community. My family came in 1980, actually October 19, 1980. I know the exact date. I was born in Israel, but I grew up about the story of my family, wanted to get to Jerusalem, to the land of Israel. My family, I would like also to share the face, because I wish it was a familiar knowledge among all. I'm going to share now the screen so you could also see. Just a minute. Those are two activists. Those are two community members that were active about bringing the Jews from Ethiopia to Israel. The one with the hat is Yona Bugale. It was also a Jewish agency worker. And the other one is Ferede Aklum. Ferede Aklum is actually the one that opened the road from the villages to my family and my family group to get from the villages through Sudan to Israel. My parents was a part of a group of 350 people that marched at night through the desert, through a road that is not even a road, through the different dangers of the road of like having robbery, rape, starving, not enough food, not enough clothes, basically to do the whole road. My dad needed to run away from the army. My dad was a soldier. And, back then the Jews were not allowed just, to decide they want to move to Israel. So there's like a story that he told us, and he tells us that actually every Passover, like, the period of time we're just at. So the day that they decided that they're going to run away with their group, he had a shift with his soldier friends, and he decided that during lunch he's going to take them to this like coffee house that they have, and to make sure that he's gonna make sure that they're gonna be there when he like runs away. So basically he invited everyone, and it was on him, all the food, all the drinks, and he made sure the soldiers in his shift that was with him got drunk. And in one period of time he was like, what, I'm just gonna go quickly to the bathroom, I'll be back, just continue, it's on me. And my dad early that day took from my mom a chemis. A chemis is a word in Tigray to say a dress. It's an Ethiopian traditional dress. And then it's something that you can cover your head with. And he basically went to the bathroom, changed his army uniform, dressed up as a woman, and jumped through out the window. And he was running to meet my mom and the rest of the group and the rest of the family. There's like crazy stories about how we got to the point where my mom was, but he was able to meet her. My mom was 7 months pregnant with 2 kids. And there's like story of how they did the road. It's such a traumatic story. There's a lot of people that are not, talking fully about what happened in the road and what happened in Sudan. My dad once said, you will never believe the stories I'll tell you about what's happened in the road. And only I would say in recent years, in the last, I feel 3-5 years, we would hear my parents' generation, like the parent generation talks more and more about it. The numbers are talking about 4,000 people that died along the way. There's a memorial site at Har Etel in Israel. I took my parents there something like 4 years ago, and we were looking for the names of people that died along the way, and they couldn't find it. So that's why I'm saying it's at least 4,000, if not more than that. You know, the stories are like, I remember my mom telling me that she didn't have enough water. There's no water, and my older sister, Terry, or Zeven, needed water. So she took gargere hummus, a chicken pig, and like squeeze it in a cloth in order to have a drop of water so she could drink. Or how people died along the way, and you couldn't have the burial as you're accustomed, or the burial that to respect the person that passed away. Through my parents came in 1980, and it was before the big operation, before the Moses operation, and before Solomon operation. But those are the two major operations well known. And if you have seen there's a Netflix movie right now, the Red Sea diving resort. And basically they're telling the story of Farid Akram that I just showed you, the one with the afro. He's the character of Mekele. And towards the end, if you know a bit of history, you see that they also mixed between Solomon operation, like the Moses operation, because in Moses operation there were no airplanes. They were taken into sea, and from there with the boats to Israel. In Solomon operation, there were like aircrafts that brought the people. So basically, the president of the Ethiopian Jewry in Israel is like from 1955, and since then, they're like different waves are coming in.
Thank you, Zehava. Another question that I wanted to ask you. So we see a central reference to the intergenerational gap between the mother Asegadu and the daughter Haley. Before my question, just a few facts about the immigration of Ethiopian Jews. So the organized immigration, also known as Beta Israel, began at the beginning of the 70s, and there were two large Aliyah operations. One that was Operation Moses in 1985 and Operation Solomon 6 years afterwards. And when looking backwards today, we can definitely say that there were in the beginning a few gaps that made it difficult to integrate the new immigrants from Ethiopia. Among other things, the obstacles derived from significant culture differences, the different color of their skin, and the transition from a rural lifestyle where they lived in a tribal family structure to a modern Western country. So going back to the intergenerational gap between the mother and the daughter, did you, Zehava, also have a similar experience as a child? Has your perspective changed now as an adult?
Yeah, because I was born in Israel. I was born like a year after my parents made Aliyah. So I'm at Sabari, but at the same time, most of the people during that time in Israel were like Olim Chadashim, newcomers. I did feel that change, because for me, the state of Israel, or the fact that I was a Mitzabarit, or the fact that I'm where I'm at, was a fact. It wasn't a realizing of the dream. It wasn't something I was yearning to be there throughout all my life. I was there, you know, and for me, the way, think of like having the biggest dream ever, whatever each one of you here has, the biggest dream ever, and you realize that dream. So everything you go through you see it differently, because you have this like strong resilience of like who you were, where you're coming from, and what you have accomplished. And for me, all that was a fact. I was born in Israel. I'm from Ashkelon. I understand the way the Israeli society works. I understand modern society. I speak the language. I didn't need to learn the language. So there was a difference between the fact that I saw I saw it as a fact, and my parents saw it as a dream that was realized. And throughout, growing up, I did see the fact that I was able to see things in a more realistic and maybe less romantic point of view, if I can say that. Because for me, I mean, of course, if there's something that needs to be changed, let's talk about it. Of course, if there's something that, it's not 100% okay, we need to discuss. We are able to share or to have criticism about what's happening. But I feel for my parents, it was different. Like, you couldn't say anything. The fact that they were in, the state of Israel, the land of Israel, they saw Yerushalayim. So for them, it was kind of like the holy dream being realized. Only when I grew up, I was able actually to understand their point of view and to see why. Because, for them to have this like little breaks or little cracks in their dream, it's something that they couldn't even, wrap their hand around. Because like for like thousands of years, my mom told me thousands of years, what they grew up is about the land of honey and how, all they need to do is just to get here. And as most of you probably know, like the Ethiopian Jews are like religious, so they have like this really strong emunah and faith, and for them there's like nothing that could break that. But as we see in recent years, I feel even the parent generation is like more open to see what needs to be changed.
Mm-hmm. One quick question from the chat. What is the level of education for those who have come as youngsters from Ethiopia to Israel?
So it depends. My family, Aliyah, people came from the village. So if you're talking about an academic higher education, so most of them didn't have. But if you're talking about life experience and life education, they for sure did. The way I think that I have a rich vocabulary when it comes to the way that I articulate in myself in different metaphors for sure comes from my Ethiopian background. So it depends from which angle you're looking at it.
Okay. I will refer to more questions from the chat in a few minutes. I wanted to ask you another thing. So in the main scene of the film, the daughter Haley takes the microphone and asks her mother, how is life in Israel? How would you answer this question?
So actually, it's a really good question. And since, we were like talking before, I was like, how would I really like answer that? So like there were like two words that came in mind, and it's like hamakom sheli. It's my place. We're starting with the fact that life in Israel, this is my place, this is hamakom sheli. Now, my generation, as most of you maybe saw from the recent years in the news, is being vocal and loud when it comes to the rights and when it comes to the situation of the Ethiopian community in Israel. And we're doing it because we want to make sure that things are being changed for better, and all the things that we see will improve for the better. So I would say it's clear to me that Chaim B'Israel, life in Israel, is my place, is a makom sheli, and from there everything I do, all the work that I do starts, and like I push myself to change things.
Mm-hmm. There are a few questions that repeat itself from the chat box. How is the current situation in Israel? Did the Ethiopian find the land of honey when they came to Israel? So it brings me to the next question. So if you would have opened the Israeli newspaper in the past few years, you could have seen an increase in the number of public protests coming from the Ethiopian community for discrimination that mainly comes from the law authorities. How do you see the Israeli society's attitude toward the Ethiopian community? Is there a change? If we're talking about 10 years ago and today, how do you think the gap, and if there is a gap, how do you think it can be narrowed?
So first of all, the picture is complicated, right? There's no like black and white. But I would say the challenges, like kind of like on 3 points the way I see it. First of all, there's like a basic questioning about, you know, the origin of the Ethiopians. Can a black be Jew? Can a Jew be black? Wherever way you want to form that question. And actually, just recently, in February or January, the Rabbanut in Israel has recognized the Ethiopian Jews as Jews. I want to just take you back in history and say that that was already being recognized by Harav Ovadia Yosef in 1973. So the motion that the Rabbanut is only now, you know, adopting that decision is a big and a huge question. And a lot of people in my generation were like, we don't need that. We know we're Jewish. We recognize ourselves. We've been recognized as. So there's like a question of that, and a lot of like life incidents that happened. That a lot was like in the Israeli news, like, you know, Ethiopian that were not allowed to like work in a winery because they're not considered to be Jewish enough. So that question of like the origin of like Jewish. The second thing I think is like stereotype, you know, and basically racism. People that just blunt as that have this like stereotype of like who you are, what your skin color represent, and based on that, basically, you know, have their form of who you are. For me personally, I have to say that Kiryat Malachi 2012 was a case where I was like, this needs to be changed, where it's not a one-on-one racism. Okay, one-on-one racism, you can say someone is ignorant, someone was not exposed, but specifically in Kiryat Malachi in 2012, what happened is a group of buildings have come together and decided that they're not going to sell a house to someone from Ethiopian origin. The fact that someone actually took that to the public sphere and he found other people to go along with was for me something really, really shocking. And I think like the third challenge is the fact that we see a generation that grew up, again, as I said, you know, being Israeli is just a fact. The fact that you're here for the rights and the obligation is obvious to all. And when the younger generation feel that there's a gap between the way he sees himself and the way he's been identified by the public, it creates this tension. And I feel there's like a tension with the younger generation and their identity. So throughout, as you said, throughout the last years, we see protests that got to do with police brutality, that got to do with, you know, questioning our Ethiopian origin, as I said, as the winery, but it was in other places. So I feel those are the challenges that we're at, but I do feel at the same time that you see there are like things that are being improved, and things are being improved a lot because the fact that, you know, the Ethiopian community is not standing aside and not pushing the system and not saying what needs to be changed. So after years of fighting for the status of the Kesim, it's a word to say an Ethiopian rabbi, they were recognized at the end of last year, and they could get the same salary as any rabbis. They could oriented new Kesim, and think about that, like the religious, spiritual leadership that, you know, was the one that led the whole Ethiopian community in Ethiopia to keep its identity, didn't have that status when they came here. It actually was a break of their leadership. But as I said, I do see a change. You know, when we're talking about culture, the recent representative for the state of Israel for the Eurovision is from Ethiopian origin. Actually, something like a week ago, the winner of the Big Brother is from Ethiopian origin. And why do I say that? Because that means the state of it, that means the people in Israel voted. It doesn't mean that the only Ethiopian community voted. As you said, we're less than 2%. So even if everyone would vote 10 times, it won't get to that huge number. So that means people are trying, or like are starting to see things differently, but it's not enough. I wanna indicate more areas when it comes to the legal system. So we have judges from Ethiopian origin, and even here, I would love to share this with you so you could see for a sec. So you have here two that are at lieutenant level, Avi Avi Yitzchak and Teganya. You have here too from the politics, Pnina Tzamano, and also Gadi Yvarkan. And to be honest, what was amazing with Gadi Yvarkan when he was at this specific picture, when he was swearing into the Israeli parliament, is the fact that he did an Ethiopian tradition. When his mom stepped into the parliament, he bent and kissed her knee and legs, and like everyone were really shocked over it. But that's the Ethiopian way of like respecting elderly. And for me, it was amazing because it was a window to the culture. And another thing here that I put is like this book, From Sinai to Ethiopia. It's actually this book that I also have here that Rabbi Sharon Shalom wrote. It's basically kind of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. It's bringing all the Ethiopian traditions, comparing that to the tradition that were in the period of the Second Temple, and basically giving a halacha perspective of what should be kept. So it says Sinai to Ethiopia, from Sinai to Ethiopia, and it's really interesting if you want to know about the Ethiopian customs. So all of that marks a change, but there's still a way to go.
Thank you. I receive a lot of, thank you, Zehava. I receive a lot of questions from the chat, and unfortunately we won't have time to answer them all, but we still have 3 more minutes. The rest of the questions, you are more than welcome to go to our Facebook page, Department for Diaspora Affairs, WZO Department for Diaspora Affairs. We will upload the recording of this session there, and you can comment there with your question. But I wanted to ask you, Zehava, 2 last questions coming from the chat. Glenn is saying and asking, we are always focused on Israel, its challenges, etc. But can you compare generally the Ethiopian Jews' experience with immigration to Israel to other countries where Ethiopians or non-Jewish have immigrated in large groups, Europe or North America?
So that's really interesting because there is a population of Ethiopians here. It's like in Washington, D.C., there's like a lot of group. You can compare, but I think there's like similarity and there's differences. And I'll be honest, I think the fact that there's like someone Black in a white group, society, environment has the same life experience. I know, me as a Shlichut being here, as an emissary being here, a lot of the time when I meet friends or co-workers that are Black or are from the African American community, I can relate to some of their life experiences because there is a difference. There is a similarity of what happened with in that interaction, but at the same time, I feel it's different because the Ethiopian Jewry dreamed of coming to Israel. Their life, their life, dream, goal, like they didn't see anything except from that. Like that's what they lived for. So I feel there it might be like different because there was like a pre-connection to this like land, to this history, to this certain faith that kind of like puts it, I feel, in a different way. But sometimes, Glenn, when I'm like thinking where we could improve, where we could like move ahead, I definitely see what happens not only with other Ethiopian that migrate to like Europe or the States or other places, but also to see what happened with other migration to Israel, what happened with the North African that came to Israel, the Russian the Russian migration in the 90s, basically to see what we can learn, because like definitely some stuff we can learn from like other migration or other aliyot.
Mm-hmm. There is a need for one more question. Actually, we have a participant that is here with us from Ethiopia. His name is Solomon, and he's saying that he doesn't think that the mother in the film had ever thought that she would become a servant in Israel. What do you have to say about that?
I think first of all, I agree. you know, my mom also needed to like, you know, she cleaned schools and like she did maintenance or like cleaning jobs. So for sure, no one, not only my mom, thought that when they moved to Israel, they would do this type of work. Like they would like, you know, just be in that socioeconomic background or like in that spectrum of work. I know that like, you know, when I was like sitting with my parents and like thinking about, you know, this like knowledge that they have, you know, the knowledge that they have in agriculture is amazing. And like there's some now NGOs in Israel that are trying to take that knowledge and bring it to Israel. And like they're having this like land next to Kiryat Gat where people could share their knowledge in agriculture and help develop that specific land. You know, I wish my parents moved to a moshav or a kibbutz when they made Aliyah. I feel that would be kind of like natural to their background, but they moved to Ashkelon and Be'er Sheva. They moved to the city, so it was different. But yeah, I feel this is the price that my parents, this is a price that our parent generation paid to make sure that their generation is being raised in the land of Israel. So yeah, I'm sure that it's not, you know, it was not a part of their dream to see themselves, you know, in cleaning positions.
Thank you very much, Zehava. And indeed, if we want to summarize this session, it is important to note that not everything is negative, and in recent years there is a high improvement when it comes to integration, to integrating the Ethiopian community in the state of Israel, and we see it in all fields, in higher education institutes, in the media, in politics, and in sports. Zehava, again, toda rabba, and thank you all for the participants who chose to join us today. On behalf of the Department for Diaspora Affairs, I hope it was an interesting glimpse for you regarding the Ethiopian community in Israel. The film is a part of our great program that's called Bet Ha'am Films, and you are more than welcome to contact Lior Sagi. His email is written now in the chat box if you want to hear about this program more. The iVision Live continues this week with a few more sessions. We have a photo contest that is open to all. You are more than welcome to take part of it. You can see, you can hear about it more in our Facebook page, WZO Department for Diaspora Affairs. Next week, we have a few sessions that you can see, again, the schedule of the sessions in our Facebook page. We have a few things about the Holocaust Memorial Day. We have a session about Haredi statehood. So like I said, I invite you all to go into our Facebook page and look up. And again, once the session will be uploaded to our Facebook page, you are more than welcome to write your comments and questions there, since we didn't have time to answer all your questions. And Zehava will make an effort to answer them in the next few days. Thank you again, everyone, and see you on our next iVision Live. Thank you. Toda.